So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Davina Lines. I'm the Managing Director of the eCommerce Club. Thank you for coming in to join us this afternoon at this Automating the eCommerce Buying Journey webinar. We wanted to make this one in conjunction with our partners, Screen Pages and Brightpearl. We wanted to make this particular webinar much more about you getting some really good quality information from our expert panelists. About which areas of your business you should be automating. You know, maybe there's some questions around sort of like areas that you've already automated, but we want to make this as interactive as possible. So we're going to be encouraging you to put questions into chat. So we're doing this event in conjunction with the Fashion Network. We've worked with Dale and his team at the Fashion Network many times before. We wanted to bring those sort of two entities together, the eCommerce Club and the Fashion Network, because it allows us to bring people from all elements of e-commerce, but also people from different parts of fashion, different parts of the process chain as well, that kind of sits behind sort of fashion, retail and e-commerce. So that's the reason why we're working together. We've worked together for many years on both physical events and on these webinars. You know, we want to make sure that we're providing you with some good, strong content. The recording from this is actually going to be made available on YouTube. So you will be able to actually tap into it afterwards. And if you've got colleagues or you've got sort of other people that you network with that you think it might be useful to, then please do post it, promote it, share it. We actively encourage that. Or if maybe you've had to dip out at any point and you want to check back on some information, then please use it yourself. So we've got a panel that I'm going to introduce you to in a moment. But actually, before we introduce them, I'd really like to get an understanding as to where you come from. So if you could tell us a little bit in the chat box about which company you work for, what you do, but also actually more importantly, can you just drop in where you're based? You know, whether that's the country or the city or the town that you live in, but it gives us an idea as to, are we talking to people based in London, Manchester, Edinburgh, or, you know, have we got people who are tapping in from India or the US? So it just gives us an idea and yourselves an idea as to where sort of like people are tuning in from, and we can hopefully use that information as part of today's event. So without much further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Tom Day. Tom, if I can hand over to you, please, and tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Screen Pages, please.
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. So I'm Tom Day. I'm the MD of Screen Pages. We're a Magento or Adobe Commerce e-commerce agency. I've worked there for about 15 years in, apart from development, pretty much every role you can have. So sort of account management and sales, project management, right through into sort of senior management as I am now. I've been lucky enough to work with, you know, through Screen Pages, 300 odd sort of e-commerce brands on helping them grow online and sort of make the best out of the technological investment that they've made. I've got 3 kids and they've kept me quite busy over the last year, and the sort of the thing I've done to sort of keep myself sane is get really into carpentry videos on YouTube, and then make disastrous copies of those in a garage with none of the right tools. So I'm quite lucky that I've still got all 10 fingers based on the last year. So Screen Pages, they've been around since 1997. So they have, in that period, worked with nearly 500 different e-commerce brands on a variety of different e-commerce platforms. We were one of the first agencies in the UK to adopt the Magento platform back when it was Magento 1. One of the first to start building on Magento 2 in 2016, and then to sort of push forward with progressive web app development about sort of 2 years ago now is when we started on that sort of path. And we've worked with lots of brands, you know, names you'd know like Thorntons, White Stuff, Dunelm Mill, charities like BBC Children in Need, Royal British Legion, British Heart Foundation, Cancer Research UK, sort of high-end brands like Christopher Ward London, Margaret Howell, Brown's Fashion, and you know, our focus is really on helping those businesses sort of grow online and as I said, making the sort of the best out of the investment they've made in their e-commerce systems, and you know, tying that into via automation, all of their other sort of business systems and processes as well.
So Tom, that's an amazing list of retailers that you've worked with in the past. So that must have given you a pretty broad range of understanding as to what's required. The progressive web apps, I know it's a topic that we've touched on in previous webinars. Is that something you're sort of very much focused on now, or is it still sort of Magento 2 or combination of the two?
So it's Magento 2 with a progressive web app actually doing the bit that the customer interacts with.
So that's the front end.
Yes, yeah, and that's pretty much our focus at this stage, because it's going to be, if you start a project now, over the months that it takes to scope out and build a project, by the time you get to the end of that, progressive web apps will be sort of, the predominance of sites that are launching then. So it's, if you want to, kind of be in the best position possible to take advantage of the benefits that gives you, the time to start that is now. And all the projects that we're sort of working on at the moment are progressive web apps.
Okay, excellent. So thank you very much for that. And then Alex, can we get an introduction from yourself, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, nice to meet you all. I'm Alex Weston. I'm a channel manager at Brightpearl. So I've spent the last 5 years or so working in partnerships, and the last 3 years specifically in the e-commerce space. So and the last year specifically at Brightpearl as well. So I've been looking after all of our different agencies like Screen Pages, our different technologies like Magento or BigCommerce or Shopify, and also other platform partnerships that we might work with as well. So that's kind of a little bit about what I do. Like Tom, I've taken up some new hobbies in lockdown. I've actually started to try and learn golf. Similar to Tom, I've had quite a few disasters when it comes to golf too. So, so yeah, it's been an interesting journey doing that. But yeah, really happy to be here today. Brightpearl as a platform, for those of you who don't know us, we're an operations platform specifically geared towards retailers. So we pretty much cover everything that happens after the buy button has been pressed on the website, whether that be stock control, order management, inventory management, warehousing, shipping, accounting. Pretty much the whole gambit of the back office is basically where Brightpearl lives. So if you think of us for that, we've worked with a ton of different brands. We've got about 1,000 customers across the UK, US, and some other countries as well. So we've got fairly a good amount of experience across lots of different brands and lots of different countries when it comes to the operational side of e-commerce.
Excellent. So just like Tom, you've got a broad range of customers that you've worked with in the past. Have you actually taken on a lot of new business over the pandemic? Has that actually been sort of a time for recruiting sort of like, new customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of customers have seen a massive increase in sales, of course, throughout the pandemic on the e-commerce side. And so I think operationally that's put quite a lot of strain on a lot of people. And for those who have manual processes and they want to resolve those things, then they've looked to systems like Brightpearl to help with that. So and hopefully we can touch on some of those topics as well in the webinar today when it comes to fixing some of those manual processes. So yeah, absolutely. That we've seen.
Yeah, perfect. And did we have a slide for you as well, Alex?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, perfect.
There's Tom's.
Actually, Tom, that was your slide.
It was. I covered everything important on there. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, did you? Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. Is there anything from here that you wanted to cover at all, Alex?
Not specifically. I think just the fact that we kind of cover everything in that back office. We'll talk about the automation side of things today as well, but really just that Brightpearl is really good for managing across lots of different sales channels. So managing inventory across your e-commerce store, maybe across marketplaces, but also fulfilling in lots of different ways as well. So if you have your own warehouse or 3PL, or if you drop ship and you want to fulfill lots of different orders in lots of different ways, then Brightpearl is really strong across those sort of things. But yeah, that's a little bit of background on us. We won't spend too long on there, I don't think.
Excellent, thank you. Well, actually, that leads us nicely into the first poll. So before we go into actually the panel discussion, and obviously we want to take some questions from the people that have tuned in, we want to get you engaged. So if you can fill in, what percentage of your time is spent on manual tasks in the back office? So manually processing orders, updating inventory records, printing labels, accounting, what are you sort of doing, do you think, percentage-wise, still manually? If you could just kind of tick the relevant box and press submit, then we thought that would be a good way to kind of lead into our first question. Cool. Has everyone clicked now? Do we have a result, or do they need a bit longer?
Just a little bit longer. 5
Just
seconds.
a little bit longer. Well, I might start asking the first question then. So So I'm actually going to throw this out to both of you, but maybe if you can answer first, Alex.
Yeah.
So what are the most common frustrations that customers experience with a non-automated purchase journey? Oh, and actually we can see the results there as well. So I don't know if this feeds into your answer. So it looks like half the time, less than half the time sort of for most people, but half the time or less is spent on sort of manual processes for most. And do you think that's common? Do you think that would kind of match what you would think?
Pretty interesting. I mean, a lot of the time merchants will come to us with a significant amount of manual process. Half the time usually is pretty similar, and it will be a big time sap on the amount of time that's spent in the back office, basically, and just getting products out of the door. Your question around kind of common frustrations that customers experience with non-automated purchase journeys is an interesting one. Probably one of the biggest things that an end customer or a consumer experiences is really a merchant not meeting delivery times or not meeting the promises that they make on a delivery time. It's pretty typical that a lot of manual processes leads to a lengthy fulfillment time, but also it's probably one of the most negative reviews is kind of items not showing up in the agreed time frame. So it could be that someone paid for next day delivery and the item didn't turn up in 24 hours, or maybe they had free delivery in 5 days and it still didn't turn up. It's usually because there's a lot of manual process that a merchant isn't able to fulfill that order and get it out of the door quick enough in the time frame that they've agreed. Outside of that, one of the most kind of common things that typically goes wrong is that people will sell things that are actually out of stock. So it'll be showing as in stock on the website, but it's actually out of stock. And then the merchant will have to follow up and basically, tell the disappointing news to that customer that the item's not actually in stock anymore, which leads to a really negative customer experience. And it's pretty unlikely that someone's going to come back. I think the stat is something like 89% of the time, if someone has a negative experience, they won't come back and do business with that brand again. So it can be pretty detrimental to the growth of an e-commerce retailer if someone has a negative experience, whether that be because of a delivery time or because of items being out of stock or something like that. And then finally, pretty commonly is kind of mispicks in the warehouse and those types of things. So, the wrong item showing up is almost as bad as it not showing up at all sometimes. So, if you ordered white wine and red wine shows up or something like that, then it's a bit of an e-commerce disaster. So,
it wouldn't bother me. I'd be quite happy with that, Alex, as long as they take the white wine as well.
Not being a wine connoisseur myself, I'd probably be the same. But it's some people would be pretty upset by that. So yeah, it can definitely lead to some pretty negative experiences, and like I say, really kind of detrimental and stops people coming back to do business with that brand again. Yeah,
and I mean that stat of 89% is incredibly high, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's basically 9 out of 10 times. So
yeah, you've got to do a lot of work to convert someone back to sort of re-engage with somebody if you've lost them sort of at that point, haven't you? Yeah. So, okay, cool. So Tom, have you got anything to add there in terms of sort of most common frustrations?
I think the one that we would see sort of from the e-commerce side particularly is brands that don't do particularly well with customer sort of experience are ones where the customer has to be proactive in finding stuff out. So if you think about all of the sort of touch points that an order goes through, from being accepted on the website to sort of being processed, being picked, packed, shipped, and sort of then delivery estimates from there on, the good customer experience is you pushing that information to the customer so that they are aware of, when to expect my order. Because I might have got the sort of free 5-day delivery and I'm spitting feathers because it's been 4 days, but I think it's been 5 and things like that. If I've got a little push alert or an email saying actually it's going to be delivered tomorrow, that cuts away a lot of that frustration. So I'm getting the information, and that's very difficult to do if you're having to manually transpose information from one system to another. It's the thing that gets left off because it's not critical to the process, but it can be the thing that in a very competitive marketplace, the thing that's differentiating one brand from another is often that customer service experience. And if you can do that, driven by people like Amazon, where everything's incredibly slick, so that's the sort of expectation that customers get, is that, okay, shopping on any site is going to be like shopping on Amazon. It's a little bit like people's expectation of search. People have been spoiled by how Google works. They assume that every search system, every box you type into is going to be that clever and that good at getting you what you want. But that takes a lot of work. And from just providing the information that you've already got in the business is a big way of sort of, closing that gap of keeping the customer informed. And yeah, particularly when it comes to delivery, because that's the biggest sort of part of the process where customers can get a less than stellar experience. You can have a brilliant website, lovely packaging, but if things turn up late or broken or, late or the wrong thing, then it doesn't matter how nice the experience is, they will go elsewhere.
Understandably so. Is there anyone then that you think, or an example of a business that has got it right, that actually has got a really good, apart from Amazon maybe, clean experience?
There are lots of sort of brands that are doing really well on it. Brands like sort of HelloFresh and Gusto, those sort of recipe delivery boxes. They are an entire business model built around convenience and making things as automated as possible. So, when you sign up to one of those services, you make a few selections, you express a few preferences at the start of the sort of setup of your account. And then effectively you can leave it alone. You can go in there and you can tweak your deliveries and you can tweak your recipes, but they will use a bunch of automation tools in the background, like, machine learning to recommend recipes. In Gusto's case, they actually use sort of machine automation on their production lines to assemble boxes. So some of the orders that are placed are not touched by people, until they're picked up by a delivery driver and put in a van. And that means that when they come to sort of challenges of scale, like when suddenly we go into a lockdown and everyone sort of signs up for these things, they've already got all those efficiencies and they can much more quickly sort of ramp up to sort of take advantage of that. Businesses like, sort of Dollar Shave Club and Harry's work in the same sort of way, so when you sort of set things up, they've got different product types that are replenishment products. So you use through them, and different products that they sell have different sort of replenishment cycles. So, razor blades will be delivered on one, shaving cream will be delivered on another, and shaving brushes on a third. And they've got sort of automation built into their systems where those things will arrive at what they think is the right time. You've always got the opportunity as a customer to go in and override that if you're going to be away on holiday or you've used things more slowly or more quickly, but it's built around you not having to be actively involved in the process. And that's how they're able to sort of retain customers for so long and get that sort of really good customer satisfaction. A couple of our customers also sort of do those things very well. Obviously, we're a little bit more familiar with how they sort of set those things up. So brands like sort of Micro Scooters and Donald Russell, who automate things right from sort of the initial customer welcome. So, as customers land on the site, as they sign up for an account or sign up for emails, that's the start of a very sort of long and complicated sort of automated email marketing program that is sending offers to customers at the right kind of time based on the weather, based on their purchasing and browsing history. And these aren't things that those merchants have got to go in and set up and go, right, okay, so customers in Group A are going to get this email. They've set rules up and then they let the automatic system sort of take over. Both those brands do an incredible amount of integration with their logistics systems as well to pull all of that information about, where is my order, when's it going to be delivered. In the case of sort of, Donald Russell and HelloFresh and things like that, it's incredibly important because there's fresh produce in there. So if I'm going to be in on a particular
What is Donald Russell? I don't actually know then, Tom.
And they're an online butcher and have been for around sort of 35 years. They're one of the royal warrant holders. So they actually are butchers to the royal family and do an incredible trade in very high quality meat. You've probably eaten their products before because they sell to pretty much every sort of nice restaurant. All of their sort of steak and things like that and cuts of meat come from Donald Russell, but they sort of moved into direct to consumer actually around the time of the BSE crisis, when suddenly no one wanted to go out and eat beef, and they sort of switched direct to consumer and never sort of looked back.
Check them out.
Yeah, they have a very, very sophisticated customer acquisition program into things like, hundreds of different persona groups and types that will get different offers based on sort of different times and things like that. And those will be automated so that as you interact with that sort of, you get a printed piece of marketing in a magazine or in another delivery from another company, and there'll be a short code on there, and that will take you to the relevant offer. It'll apply it automatically in your basket. It'll automate a lot of those things that a customer could do, but some customers won't do, and that will be any kind of customer frustration is the merchant's fault. It's not the customer doing things wrong, it's your fault. There's a problem with the website, it's not me, it's you. So anything you can do that kind of cuts those difficult steps out just lends that sort of better customer experience and the likelihood that they'll continue to shop with you longer term.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. There's some really great ideas there, and I think it's useful to be able to look at other retailers, other sort of D2C brands, and see what they're doing so that you can kind of copy that good practice. Alex, have you got some examples of who you think has got this kind of automation nailed?
It's really interesting, actually. Tom touched on the kind of Gusto thing and how they really set themselves up for scale. And I think they had like a massive influx of new customers that came into their brand when the pandemic hit, because there was such a shortage of food on the supermarket shelves. So understandably, people looked to different options. And there's a customer of ours called Goose and Gander. They grew rapidly in the last couple of years. But they didn't really have any kind of infrastructure and stock software in the background to kind of help them out. So by automating and doing these things in the back office and having orders fulfilled in an automated way and inventory managed in an automated way, they were able to kind of manage a 500% increase in order speed. So in order processing speed, sorry. So they're able to get products out of the door much quicker, and that's allowed them to kind of be set up for scale, get products out the door in an accurate way, but also do that in a way that means that they don't have to add too much extra resource, and it's very sustainable for them to be able to manage that kind of level of growth. Similarly, we work with a shoe retailer called Fairfax and Favour. Apparently, luxury shoes were a massive thing during the during the pandemic.
Where were people going in them?
I don't know. It's just absolutely baffling. But there you go.
They're wearing around the bedroom, maybe.
Yeah, it could be. I think there's this whole idea of like revenge spending and things like that, isn't there? So yeah, they sort of.
Or perhaps it was that people weren't going out spending so much generally, so they had more money in their bank accounts and thought, that pair of shoes that I've been coveting, I'm going to go and buy them.
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, the fact is they saw like a 300% increase in sales by automating all of the back end. They were able to deliver 99% of them as next day delivery, even during the pandemic with less staff in the warehouse. So it's just another good example of someone who's kind of automated that back office, is able to see a massive increase overnight. 300% is huge. But they're able to deal with it like without really breaking too much of a sweat. And I say that as someone who wasn't in the warehouse, not breaking a sweat. So I'm sure it was running around with your hair on fire. But at the same time, they're able to kind of meet the customer expectations still, cope with that level of increased demand, and do it with less staff in the warehouse as well. So it just goes to show that the power of having these things automated in the back office can really help in times of kind of increased demand as well.
But also you've got increased income, haven't you? So if you need to, automate, and that then increases the kind of flow through, then hopefully some of the sort of manual labour is taken out, and where you need to then sort of fill in certain roles, you have the ability to do that with the extra income.
It's the biggest thing really with automation is that it allows you to kind of process ordinary orders, but just manage like exceptional things. And I think that is that's probably across the board, wherever it's the back office, the front end, with your marketing, anything that's out of the ordinary can have a lot more time and attention dedicated to it if you know that all of the ordinary stuff is kind of happening in an automated way and you don't have to touch it. So yes, that's definitely a huge thing for merchants who do this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one of the things we wanted to come on to next was thinking about kind of positive buying experience that retain customers. I know you mentioned sort of a couple of examples there, but are there sort of other things that you think really give people a kind of positive customer journey that would keep them kind of tied into a brand and coming back in? Yeah,
it's a funny one actually, because I think one of the biggest things, and Tom really alluded to it, is that it's about expectation setting and communication and just meeting those expectations. I think probably the most common frustration with customer experience is kind of having a different expectation to what is actually delivered. An example just from my own life is that I was really looking forward to the final. I don't know if I want to mention that. On Sunday, I was.
No, you can.
I was pretty excited about it. I ordered a T-shirt that said "It's coming home" on it, and I ordered it on the Thursday or whenever it was, the day after the semi-final, and I immediately got an email from the merchant called Art of Football that said, we've had an influx of orders, we've had way more than we ever expected. It's possible that we're not going to be able to deliver your T-shirt before the final on Sunday. So although I was pretty
disappointed. And did you then cancel, or did you get it anyway?
Because I still got it, and I thought I'm going to wear it for the World Cup.
Yay!
But the fact is that I probably would have been pretty annoyed had it not showed up on the Sunday if I thought it was still going to do so. But the fact that I knew it probably wasn't going to made me just feel a little bit more calm about it. And it showed up today, and I'm just like, all right, well, it's still a really nice t-shirt. I'm still going to keep it. And if they hadn't have communicated that, I could have pretty angrily written a Trustpilot review or something that scolded them for not communicating that to me. But the fact is that they were able to communicate that to me and realize that they probably weren't going to get that order over to me. And that's probably less about automation and more about just generally having good communication with your customers and just set an expectation that if something exceptional does happen, you're able to deal with that in a way that and communicate that clearly to those customers as well.
Excellent. Tom, can you think of any examples then that would kind of lend themselves to a positive buying experience?
I think it very much comes back to what Alex was saying. It's about those businesses that meet the expectations that they set, and that doesn't always mean having to get things to the customer, the next day by 9 o'clock in the morning. It's recognizing how and where you're going to be able to deliver that service, whether it's getting a product to their house, whether it's delivering a digital service, whether it's anything like that. It's making sure the customer is clear on what they're actually getting, what they're signing up for, and then doing everything you can to meet or exceed that. So it's if your free delivery is generally sort of 3 days, put 5 days, because generally everyone's going to get their things before that, and it'll be a positive experience rather than saying, oh, it'll be 3 days. Some people get them in 4, and for them that's a negative experience. Brands that do that the best, it'll be those subscription-based brands where they're much better able to predict the sort of demand they're going to have on a particular day to make sure they've got sort of inventory and delivery and logistics all lined up for, Mondays. Lots of people get their sort of food delivery boxes on a Monday. Less people get them throughout the week. So they've got a very sort of, peaky logistical challenge of deliveries over that sort of first day, and then sort of 6 relatively quiet days in a week. But because they know that, because they can predict that, they can set themselves up to make sure that that's not going to be something that catches them unawares. And that's, if you're doing things manually and you suddenly get an influx of orders, your team are going to be busy rekeying those orders. They're not going to be stepping back and going, oh, hang on a minute, there's likely to be a problem down the road with suddenly us all having to deliver these things, ordered on a Thursday, delivered by the final on a Sunday. Let's get ahead of that and make sure the customer's expectations are managed, that they're aware of what's happening, because people are much more likely to be forgiving if you've told them ahead of time, oh, look, you and everyone else in the UK has ordered a t-shirt. It's going to take a while to deliver the 31 million that, for people who watch the final. So we will try our best to get them to you, bear with us if we can't. And I say the businesses that are doing that sort of every sort of single week, those subscription orders are the ones that have got that kind of, locked in.
Absolutely. Sorry, there's someone coming to my door, so you might hear the dog in the background over this next question. This is the joy of working from home, isn't it? So Tom, this is a good one for you, bearing in mind sort of, what Screen Pages' area of expertise. So if you're optimizing your e-commerce platform for automation, what should and shouldn't you be doing?
So I think it starts from really making sure you have the right platform. So there are some platforms, sort of e-commerce platforms, that lend themselves really well to applying automation to them. Those would be ones that have lots of sort of, that are extensible, that have lots of interconnectivity through APIs. Magento, Shopify, and BigCommerce are all sort of great examples of those. They're very well interconnected with, systems like Brightpearl, marketing systems, that mean a lot of that sort of manual handling of data from one system to another is just sort of taken off your plate. And again, that deals with the 95, 99% of everyday tasks, and then you can just focus on the exceptional ones that sort of fall outside that. I think once you've, so knowing what tools your platform has available, because obviously not everyone can just go, I'm going to switch to a different platform today. It's sort of a time-consuming sort of endeavor. So looking at whatever tool you've got, there's almost undoubtedly some tools in the e-commerce platform you're using that would allow you to sort of achieve levels of automation that you aren't doing at the moment. But they might have been something that was in there from day dot, that's 2 years down the line, and everyone who was involved in learning about that has moved on or forgotten. So kind of revisit what's in the platform, what's in your tool set already, and look at the areas that you might not be using. Obviously, one of the things that you'll have to understand is what your processes are, where your time is being taken up with the manual process. And that's a question of just kind of taking almost a step back from being involved in rekeying orders to look at, okay, well, what do we do? So, the poll that we asked at the start of how much of your time do you spend doing manual tasks? So the people who said 25 to 50%, they're spending over a day a week just doing manual things. Okay, well, if one of those manual things is exactly the same every time, that's ripe for sort of automation. You need, I think, some way of when we come back to the first point I made, the customer expectation setting and customer communication, they're getting pickier and more diverse in how they like to be communicated with. So, email is a great way of keeping people up to date because it's fairly sort of wide across, everyone's got an email address. But lots of customers actually like push notifications better. So if you've got an app or a progressive web app, that's something that you can start to push out messaging to customer about, just little updates on their order that are going to be sort of interacted with, dismissed, but the customer's informed. You can automate things like, social proof marketing. So if you're a brand, people are probably talking about you on social media, making use of sort of aggregating all of that information into the marketing, and the sort of the customer service activities that you have, rather than going out and looking for it on a regular basis. Things like inventory and low stock management. So, it's possible to sort of automate systems where if, lines run low, they're automatically reordered rather than just going, oh, I'm out of stock and waiting for someone to sort of do something. Automating things like category merchandising and things like that, rather than people with sort of large product catalogs can spend a long time thinking about the precise order in which products go on a category. That's going to be great for one set of customers, but you've got lots of different customer types hitting the site. So, make that driven by the customer activity, automate that, or allow customers to sign up to be notified when things come back into stock. And, rather than just them filling out a form, you have to then remember to email them, get your sort of e-commerce system to do that for you, so that as soon as you return an item stock, it automatically emails those customers and you've sort of got them back in. And through things like search as well, get search that sort of automatically learns what products are sort of popular on the site, rather than just it's really good at returning results for a particular search term. You want it to start acting like a salesperson to say, right, well, you've typed this in, you probably want these 3 products. These are the ones that are, best suited for people who give us that sort of search term. And those are all technologies that you can sort of take, and they're either in sort of e-commerce platforms now, or there are sort of partner systems out there that can sort of bring that technology to you. And that just takes a big chunk of time out that you can then spend thinking and growing, other areas of the business.
Absolutely. And I think, Alex, is thinking about sort of you and Brightpearl, do you ever get anyone who, when they're looking to re-platform, or maybe they're starting a new business, who actually says, I know Brightpearl, I really like Brightpearl, actually I want to use them, I'm going to choose them and then see which platform they kind of sink in nicely with? Do you ever get it the other way around, that it's kind of driven backwards in effect?
It's definitely a common thing that, it's a bit chicken and egg of really, like, do people do the back office first before the kind of e-commerce and the front end, or the other way around? And we've seen merchants do back office first and then pick a platform accordingly. We've seen people come to us with a brand new website who want to sort the back office out afterwards. We've seen people try and do both at the same time, and it's pretty common for all three kind of use cases. But absolutely, it does happen where people have kind of made their mind up about what they want to do at the back office, and it's not actually a bad place to start, because if you get that kind of order management piece and the how you're going to fulfill those orders in place straight away and automate that, then you can kind of figure out the front end and latch that on afterwards. Sometimes it can be hard to put the back office around how you've decided that the purchase journey will happen on the website. It can definitely be a good way around to think about things. Just having kind of the right data in place is probably one of the key areas to look at first. Making sure that you've got some kind of uniformity of data across all of your different platforms is going to get you a long way to being able to integrate those things, I think. And so probably Tom can talk more about this, and it's hard to kind of follow up with his answer, which pretty much covered everything on the last bit.
I was going to say, it's an incredibly comprehensive answer, Tom.
Exactly.
I was thinking, I don't know what else Alex can say now.
Exactly. But I think just making sure that you've got your kind of e-commerce platform integrated seamlessly into whatever backend system it is that you decide to use. One of the areas that you can really help yourself to do that is by having data that's clean, it's not messy and all of that kind of stuff, and using an agency to kind of help you to on that journey as well will be absolutely vital, because as you start to automate things, you'll need things in a kind of uniform way, and the more kind of mess there is around that, the harder that is to do. So I think it's definitely a really good place to start.
Excellent. I think we're going to come to another poll now. I don't know if Dal, if you can sort of pop this up. But we wanted to find out which of these areas provide the most opportunity for automation in your business. So this is kind of related into the sort of the original question, I suppose, which is about the percentage of time you're spending sort of on manual tasks. But, you know, which areas do you think within your particular business, this is to our lovely guests that are listening in, can you say, do you think would benefit from automation? So if you can just kind of take part in that poll, then that will help us kind of inform the sort of second half of today's webinar. Also, do remember that we want, you know, questions directed at the panelists. So if you've got a question, you want to pop it into chat, then I can sort of ask it for you, or, you know, the panelists can pick up on it and they maybe will respond in chat or sort of like as part of their answer. So sort of do pop your questions into the chat box. So looking at this, warehouse and logistics and operations sort of come out right at the top, basically. Surprisingly, sort of marketing sort of coming in at 13% for me. I would have thought that would have been higher potentially, but then I suppose sort of, you know, the logistics and operations is the kind of area that could sort of trip you up when we go back to sort of your earlier answers, that's potentially where sort of like, you know, that post-sale kind of sort of process can fall over. So is there anything surprising here, Tom, Alex, do you think?
No, I think warehousing and logistics is, I mean, it's quite a broad topic anyway, but it's definitely one where not only is a manual process very inefficient, it's also prone to human error. You know, if you are having people rekey things from one system into another, printing out emails and sort of retyping them into a delivery system, you are going to get a certain proportion of mistakes. And, you know, mistyping a customer's phone number, or their postcode, or the number of quantities of a SKU they've ordered. Those are all things that you won't know. You won't know until the customer calls you back when their package is not turned up or it's turned up incorrectly. And then you're scrabbling to sort of, you know, try and get the right products to the customer at the right time. And it's also one of those things that often involves an awful lot of systems. So, you know, it comes from the data that goes into the e-commerce system that the customer's putting in, right through to sort of ERP, order management, logistics. Then the delivery companies have to have an accurate copy of the information as well. So there's lots of different systems that have to all work together as seamlessly as possible to make that not the part of your business that you have to spend time worrying about.
Yeah.
So Alex, then, if you're looking at the digitization of your retail logistics, what do you think that looks like as a smooth process?
There's so many different areas that you can cover it in all of that. But I mean, I think there's obviously really important areas to start with, and I think first and foremost, really ensuring that you have the right inventory levels across all your different channels, but really being able to back that up with accurate forecasting of future stock requirements as well, with things like demand planning. So if you're looking at your stock levels that you have currently, and what you're predicting to sell, how much you think you're going to increase, if you're looking at putting a sale on, for example, and how that's going to affect your demand, things like that can really help. And it just allows you to be able to properly plan that demand, and plan how much stock you're going to need to be able to meet that demand as well. As much as you want to have the right inventory levels, like flowing up to all the right different sales channels and everything like that, so you're not selling stuff that's out of stock, having the right stock obviously is vital as well, and also not having too much stock, right? No one wants to have stock that's just sitting in the warehouse taking up valuable warehouse space either, and it's not really being shipped anywhere. So I think that can be really key, and it just allows you to kind of meet that customer demand more, keep an eye on what stock is moving more slowly, and then take that warehouse space and put it to better use, basically. But it also allows you to free up more time, and meet that customer demand where it's most needed too. that could be one area, and freeing up that warehouse space and demand forecasting and everything like that is brilliant. But purchasing, fulfilling, shipping, accounting, all of those areas are ripe for digitization and automation. Basically, the less time spent on any kind of manual repetitive task, as Tom said, if you're doing it every day and it's always the same, then it's perfect for an automated or some kind of automation. So the more time that you can spend dealing with not dealing with things that are just repetitive tasks, and the more time you can spend dealing with out of the ordinary orders and things that that do come up less often. But the key thing is really that if you're spending nearly 80% of your time on manual processes, and you agree that the warehouse and operations are the areas where the most automation opportunity is, if you can get those things nailed and get them down and get them automated, then you can spend more time on growth activity and looking at automating things like marketing. So it might seem like a low priority right now because it's not the thing that's causing the headache. There's lots of things that are happening in the back office. There's so many different steps. But there is a huge opportunity to automate marketing as well. And people can spend a lot more time to do those types of things if they're not rushed off their feet trying to just get orders out of the door and running around the warehouse trying to figure out what stock they need to buy next and all of that kind of thing. So really the kind of opportunities and the digitization of retail logistics covers broadly everything in the back office, but it's really identifying, as Tom said, those things that you do every day and those repetitive tasks to make sure that those are the things that you kill first. And then that allows you to focus on that growth activity and broaden that out more afterwards.
And I suppose also that means that then you're allowing yourself or the sort of talent within your business to be able to think about the bigger picture, to be able to think about the brand, to be able to think about the experience overall, rather than be processing kind of sort of menial tasks.
No one wants to be kind of strangled by those kind of process and those menial tasks, as you say. So if you can free up the mind of all the people in the organization to be able to look at these things more creatively, then it allows the business to grow forward, and they're not held back by the kind of shackles of manual process. It really kind of frees them up to be able to grow, and with confidence as well, because they know that they can scale. And as they do these more kind of growth activities, they're able to know that they've confidently can meet that extra demand. So when I look at some of our customers who've hit a 300% increase in sales throughout a pandemic or whatever, I'm glad for them that they're able to do that with confidence in the fact that they can meet that demand and scale and go on and try and incorporate more growth activity afterwards as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we can come back to you, Tom, how do you ensure then that your e-commerce platform integrates into your logistics systems? How do you make sure that they work effectively together?
Well, it obviously comes down to selecting the right platforms. So in the modern era, pretty much every business system that you would be able to pick or use, from e-commerce to logistics to warehouse, they would all have kind of integration potential. Some of them make it easier, some of them make it more difficult. So choosing something that lists integration as one of its key features is going to be sort of critical, so that you're not fighting against the tool, you'll sort of work with it. Obviously picking the right partner or agency, so someone who's got experience with doing integration and understands the benefits of having it done correctly, so that it does free up that time and it gives your team more days in a week effectively to sort of work on the growth activities, as Alex said. Once you've sort of, I suppose, got those two bits in place where you understand what's possible, it's putting those agencies together. So explaining to them what the problem is. The problem is we're spending 80% of our week manually requeuing orders. What are the solutions? And letting those sort of agencies, those platforms, come back to you and say, well, actually, look, we can solve that challenge for you. Maybe not for every single order, as Alex said, it's the making that 95% of things flow through the system without having to be touched means that you've got time to focus on the customer service for the unusual 5% of orders that do need manual intervention, that are personalized or customized or suddenly need delivery to an outer Hebridean island, and that's going to take some sort of working out how to get it there. Once you've got those sort of things in place, understanding what the user journeys are, so how the customer is going to interact with the different parts of the process, so from the ordering to the sort of calling up customer service to say, where's my order, can I return it? So understanding where those sort of customer touch points are and making sure that you've got those sort of documented down. And then building a sort of scope for the integration and working out, okay, well, in order to fulfill those sort of customer touch points and to satisfy customers as much as possible, what data am I going to need in those different systems? So one advantage of integrating things is once you've got it working, you can push far more data backwards and forwards than you can if you're manually rekeying things. If you're manually rekeying things, it's a rush. You're doing the bare minimum. Automating it so that computers are talking to computers, you can do far more with it in the same sort of time. So building out that kind of, okay, well, where is my data going to come from? Which systems is it going to go to? How often is it going to be synchronized across the two? Once you work that out, obviously, then there's the small challenge of doing that. The biggest part I think that you can do to make sure it's seamless is testing once it's finished. So sort of any kind of system worth its salt will have a test version, sort of e-commerce platforms, sort of back-end system platforms, marketing platforms that you can put these integrations into place with, and then just test. And when you think you've done enough testing, do a little bit more. Take your 1,000 orders that your customers have last put through and run them through the integration as a test just to see what falls out. Pick the weird orders that you know are going to cause problems and see what happens there. And that's the best thing you can do, really. Also recognizing that those integrations are very rarely 100% perfect for absolutely everything over the course of 5 years. You'll have different customer expectations 18 months down the line when suddenly we're in a pandemic that maybe weren't there when you put the integration sort of together in the first place. So recognize that over time it will need to change is also important.
I think that's the thing, is that so many companies had to pivot, didn't they, sort of when the pandemic hit. And there were obviously, lots of opportunities that came out of that, but also, quite a number of casualties as well that sort of came out of that as well. So I'm going to sort of pop back over to you, Alex. So how do you think convenience drives customer retention?
I mean, it's a really interesting one. It's obviously grown in its importance of convenience, and there's no hiding from the fact that people like Amazon and those types of businesses have kind of changed convenience and the meaning of the word in a lot of ways. But I think just creating a frictionless buying experience is pretty vital across all the different channels. So that can help you acquire customers because they can find it easier to purchase and make that purchase, but also retain if they have a really good experience on the website and they have a really good experience after the buy button has been pressed as well. Then that can be crucial for making sure they come back again. I think the stat, by the way, if someone is guaranteed to have a good experience, the majority of customers will pay 15% more to have a good experience. So it can be a really a driver of kind of revenue on the front end as well before someone's even made that purchase. But was
that 15% you said, Alex?
Yeah, 15%. Yeah.
15%.
But yeah, making the checkout returns processes simple, personalized, and quick will kind of catch the attention of all customers. But also offering fulfillment options such as like buy online, pick up in store, or click and collect. Kind of thinking of that omni-channel approach is going to be pretty key as well. So the convenience of being able to pick up my parcel from wherever I want to pick it from, have it delivered in the time frame that I really want to have it delivered in, any kind of alternative shipping method that I want as well, and it also can be an opportunity to get customers into the store as well. So the convenience comes in lots of different ways, whether that can be the ease of which someone can purchase on the website and how quickly they can get it to the door, but also whether if they don't want it delivered to the door and they want to go and pick it up from in store or something like that, then that can be equally as true as well. And likewise, convenience comes into the kind of return side as well. One of the biggest things of customer retention is the ability to be able to return an item and refund and exchange it, and it's a huge problem and a headache for a lot of retailers, but it's a huge headache for a lot of customers as well. And I think they find it really, it can really aggravate people if they're not able to easily return products that they don't want anymore. So thinking about a customer-centric kind of returns process and having that kind of clearly displayed on the website as well is also a key area.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Tom, do you have any kind of thoughts on that, about sort of convenience? You mentioned sort of before about subscription services. I'm guessing that kind of sort of plays its part as well.
It does. One thing I was going to add to sort of what Alex said is when you're building a sort of a customer-centric returns process, recognizing that having a very slick returns process, for particularly obviously for an online business, means that you are much more likely to sort of retain customers. And if you are, you can possibly afford to build that return cost into your product price. So, recognizing that that's actually returns is almost a marketing function. So rather than going, right, obviously we've got to charge for returns because people have got to come and pick it up and things like that. If you build that into your cost of fulfilling those products in the first place and make it super simple and very, very convenient for customers to return things, they will be more happy in future to go and go, well, I'll try that. If it's something they're not too sure about, we've all experienced that. Looks brilliant on the website, order it. It's not quite the right color. It's not exactly what I thought it was. If you are working with a brand, if you're shopping from a brand then who is making it difficult for you to return that, you're less likely to want to sort of shop with them in the first place. So I would say kind of look at it almost in that way. I think it's, recognizing that, if you're not actively working towards customer sort of, convenience, what you're doing is driving churn. So you are driving those customers away to businesses that do care about that, do put, putting themselves in the customer's shoes in everything that they do. You are going to move them away to there, unless you happen to be lucky enough that you are the only person in the entire world that sells the product you're selling, in which case, congratulations. But that's a very rare case.
Doesn't I was going to say, that doesn't seem very likely, does it? So we've actually got a question from somebody listening in, and they said that they're currently running a fashion agency. They want to start an e-commerce retail store. They live in Nigeria. They want to promote African designers who are doing great designs to the international market. Where do they start? Any kind of thoughts, like what platform should they go on to? Is there a kind of place to start? Is there a little bit of advice that you can give?
I suppose I'll answer that one first, as that kind of is my sort of area of expertise. I think what you would be best to do is find someone who's familiar with the local market. As much as e-commerce is sort of global, there are nuances to sort of every international market in terms of what customers expect, in terms of whether they like to see prices including or excluding taxes, including or excluding delivery, even the payment methods they use and how things are delivered. You only have to go a short journey into Europe to get e-commerce sort of payment and sort of logistics landscapes that you would look at and barely understand. The payment methods in certain European countries are completely different to ours, and you can't just take the UK model and just sort of plonk it there and go, great, it'll be a success. So I would find someone, sort of an agency or sort of a platform that has an established base in the market that you're trying to sort of sell into, and ask for their advice. Platforms like sort of Shopify, Magento, BigCommerce, lots of the software as a service platforms, they will have the ability to trade in those markets. That's the basic engine. If you're looking for sort of advice on how to approach it, because there's a million different things to do when you're sort of trying to start an e-commerce business, it's knowing which ones to sort of tackle first. I would find someone who's already familiar with that market and just sort of get on board with them.
Well, that actually to me is good advice, and also then you can build a relationship with them as well, can't you? Because there's more of an opportunity to be able to do that. We wanted to put out get some idea from the people that are actually sort of listening today as to what have they attempted to automate in the past, and actually where did it go wrong. So if you can just pop that into chat, that if you attempted to automate anything previously, and if so, was there anything that wasn't so successful, or obviously tell us about your successes too. I think we're kind of sort of coming towards the end of this now, so it'd be really good if we could get some idea on sort of future trends in retail automation. So I don't know if we can sort of pop over to you first, Alex.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we kind of touched on it already, and it's something that everyone is pretty aware of, but and not even necessarily that different. But the speed of delivery and timeframes is absolutely something that is growing massively, largely due to Amazon and Amazon Prime. They've pretty much changed how people buy, where they buy from, and people's expectations and experiences are changing massively. So as much as you can set yourself up for scale and give yourself the flexibility to be able to meet the demand and that have that kind of difference between winning and losing basically is key, because I think more and more people are expecting to be able to have an Amazon-like experience from smaller e-commerce brands as well. It can be really, really tough to replicate because we don't have the scale behind us of an Amazon. But there are softwares out there to help us, and I think what smaller e-commerce brands have in their favor is also the fact that they are more agile than something like Amazon, and they are able to kind of meet these things more as well. But they also have the goodwill of customers. If I think of my t-shirt example, I was really happy to buy from a British-based brand that was selling t-shirts for the World Cup, for the Euros final and the World Cup final. I'm dreaming of next year already, but
well, we all, Alex.
Yeah, exactly. But I was very happy to be buying from them, and I think given that goodwill, I was able to kind of to understand their predicament when it came to their inability to be able to fulfill that by the final. So I guess my point being that, as people try and meet Amazon's delivery time frames and those somewhat unrealistic expectations, there's also a lot of goodwill. And so as much as you can communicate with the customers and make sure that you keep them top of mind, then that will be something that you can overcome as well.
Excellent. So Tom, have you got any thoughts on the future trends we should be looking out for in retail automation?
Yeah, I think it's as Alex said, it's much driven by the experience that people have from Amazon. So it's the a brand that you go to, knowing what I like, what I don't like, showing me relevant things, all driven by the data that they're already giving you. They're voting with their feet about what they look at, what they sort of buy, what they return. Building all that into how you market to them, what products you show them, just means that it's you're giving them a better customer experience because what they're seeing is relevant, and I'm not having to look through your entire product catalog of tens of thousands of lines. You're showing me the things that I want, and Amazon's very good at that. It's a necessary evil, but we can all learn from them because they spend tens or hundreds of millions of dollars on research and split testing and working out what does work and doesn't work, and we can as the sort of the rest of the e-commerce industry who are playing against them, we can kind of watch, right, what do they end up doing in the end? Okay, that must be the one that works, and we can glean sort of information from how they sort of divide things, and making use of those little bits of kind of artificial intelligence in sort of discrete ways. So things like voice-driven sort of search and buying. So most people have got sort of echoes in there. I'm not going to say the word because obviously all mine will go off behind me, but sort of voice assistants where you can buy from, but that requires knowing an awful lot about what I like as a customer and my personal purchase history, and having accurate information across my systems to show me what's in stock, what price it is, and things like that. So it's kind of where it'll be is having more of that, sort of machine learning and artificial intelligence driving some of those things that your business is doing to, again, sort of free you up, to give you more time back in your week to think about what to do next.
Exactly. I mean, even as a consumer, I feel that technology is supposed to be there in order to be able to make our lives easier, to either give us more free time or, just to sort of take away some of those kind of menial tasks that we're always rushing around trying to squeeze in between everything else. So we're kind of coming off to the end of the session now. We are going to have an expert panel chat afterwards, which has been dropped into the sort of chat. The link has been dropped into the sort of chat box. So if you do want to come in, you want to ask sort of Alex and Tom any questions, and obviously me too, but if you want to ask us any questions afterwards, then you've got a kind of more sort of one-on-one opportunity to be able to do that. So grab that link and pop in and join us on a different sort of call once we've finished here. So I want to say thank you very much to both Alex at Weston at Brightpearl and also Tom Day at Screen Pages. So thank you for joining us today. You've done an excellent job. And one of the things that I wanted to mention is that we're doing one of our first in-person events actually in August. So on August the 10th, we've got an e-commerce club summer barbecue, which should be a bit of a get-together for partners and retailers that haven't been able to meet up over the past sort of year and a half. So obviously I want to extend that invitation to my panelists, but also to everyone else who's listening in too. So check that out. And if we can pop up the final slide. Dal, that would be great. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for everybody for listening in. Do remember that you can get a copy of this recording on YouTube, and we will be posting it out on our newsletters, both on the e-commerce club and on the Fashion Network, once this session has ended. So probably tomorrow, so that you'll be able to get the opportunity to be able to sort of share that. We'll also share with you the details for both Brightpearl and for Screen Pages, in case you want to link in with them or ask them any further questions. And without much further ado, I'd like to say sort of thank you and goodbye. I don't know, panelists, if you want to come on screen and say goodbye.
Thank you very much. Yes, thanks a lot, Davina, for having us.
No problem at all.
Thanks for inviting us along. It's been a pleasure.
Lovely. And I will see you both in a few minutes or a couple of minutes on the other call.
Perfect. See you there.
Great.
Thank you.